Rhulk tends to be overlooked as an overly simple and slow-paced boss encounter, but there are still some small optimizations to be made in how you dunk, both before and after you go up to the top platform. With a boss's main appeal, dynamic movement during damage, is negated by tractor tanking, what's left in this encounter is effective communication, smart dunk pathing, fast crit breaking, and an easier version of Caretaker damage. In order to get Rhulk to move to his damage arena, players need to manage the leeching and emanating force buffs so that they can dunk correctly a total of 6 times. By splitting buffs in an effective and efficient manner, players can get done with dunks in the shortest possible amount of time. In this encounter, 3 sets of 2 dunks need to be performed. As a result, 6 individual buffs need to be obtained, but this is not possible with only 6 people on the team, given that you lose buff once you split it to 2 other players. Therefore, the current strategy is to designate 2 people as splitters who alternate splitting the buff while shooting the same crystal, in our case the right one. This continues until 4 players labeled 2, 3, 4, and 5 have buff. After 2 and 4 dunk as soon as possible, the splitting continues until 2, 3, 4, and 5 have buff once more, at which point 4 and 5 dunk in the second set and 2 and 3 dunk in the third set. Since the first 2 dunkers, 2 and 4, have their buffs long before the correct dunks are identified, it is important that glyphs are killed instantly in order to determine what the common symbol is as quickly as possible. You can have any 2 appropriate players call symbols as long as they are guaranteed to have or not have buff when the time is right. For example, 2 could call Taken and 6 could call Scorn. When it comes to actually killing the glyphs, rockets or fusion grenades make quick work of them. Ghost Tower Love. Calling dunks quickly is essential to progressing this encounter quickly. Most teams have one dedicated caller, someone who never gets buff, so the 6th player in our diagram. But it is possible to have 2 callers, one for each side of the map. Regardless, it is important to avoid blocking the symbol pillars with obstructions like storm grenade clouds, and dunk callers should also prioritize calling one dunk location quickly, even if they haven't located another one. This is because the symbols refresh around 5 seconds after any dunk is made, meaning that as long as the second dunk in a pair is made within 5 seconds of the first one, it is more important that the first dunk is made as soon as possible. There should also be at least one person on an eager edge sword in the first 2 dunk pairs, since in those pairs, one dunk should be done as soon as possible. In the last pair, since both need to be fast, you can either have both players on rockets or have both on swords, depending on how ammo dependent your damage strategy is. We didn't find it to be faster to have everyone on a sword, but your team may achieve different results. Once bottom buffs are done, players should leave adds alive on the bottom platform, especially scions, so they can multiply and be used for death throws stacks later on. There are 2 things to note about Rhulk's glaive phase up by his damage arena. First, glaives linger behind Rhulk for a while even after he decides to start dashing to create a new one. Second, Rhulk will not produce any new glaives with his dash attacks if any players have the leeching force but not the emanating force buff. This information translated into the strategy that you can see in the current vow record. The first 2 glaives are broken back to back after waiting for Rhulk to dash, and then both of those players get lasered so that no one has leeching force, allowing Rhulk to continue producing glaives. After this, glaives would be broken immediately, otherwise we'd end up with 2 players needing emanating force instead of 1. With this 2-1-1 strategy, 3 of the crits were broken essentially instantly, with the 4th crit being gated to the last player's dunk. The last crit, being the hardest to break, would be isolated, allowing everyone on the team to target it with weapons like Izanagi's Burden, Succession, or in the debuff player's case, Tractor Cannon and Recombination Heritage. Dunking top buffs is a bit different from bottom buffs. Instead of rushing to dunk as quickly as possible, players wait until a dunk call is made for a very specific reason. Dunking during the top glaive section of the encounter interrupts whatever animation Rhulk is currently in, forcing him to recoil and expose a crit on his body. Dunking at the wrong time has the potential to interrupt Rhulk from starting a dash or performing his laser attack, which can slow down other players getting their emanate, when instead, a coordinated dunk once all players are buffed will allow everyone to focus on buff management instead of on crits. As such, the dunk call is made when the 4th player has received emanating force and is on their way to a dunk, and everyone immediately turns from their dunk to start breaking crits before heading to damage.
Final
Dunk.
call, L1, final call.
Crits, crits. Rhulk's damage phase is pretty straightforward compared to Caretaker. He can be stun locked into a melee animation loop by having a player in close proximity to him the entire damage phase, ensuring that they are constantly doing damage to him and within very close range to keep him away from the rest of the team. This player, typically on tractor cannon and healing grenades, should debuff Rhulk and lead him away from the rest of the team around the time the dunk call is made, so that the crits take more damage and so that there is less chance that Rhulk dashes or starts damage in the well where the other players are. As for the other players, the damage setup is the exact same as Caretaker for the most part, with more focus on Wolfpack rockets to augment damage on top of into the light grenade stacking with Verity's Brow. Something important to note for those using Verity's Brow. Stacks can be acquired off Shadow Thralls before damage, and then once damage is about to start, a refresh can be obtained by walking out of the arena and shooting an enemy down below that was preserved from the bottom dunk section. There is an invisible barrier between the top and bottom sections of the encounter that will block weapons from penetrating it, so ensure that you walk through the threshold when refreshing death throws. For final stand, players should switch to damage super exotics after stacking grenades underneath Rhulk's feet, as they wait for him to become damageable. Our team never fully got the hang of how to get Rhulk to instantly start final stand, but he seems more likely to start it sooner if he is not currently stuck in an animation. More specifically, it is best that Rhulk decides to switch aggro targets as he is entering final stand, so that he is not in the middle of a dash, melee, or laser attack when you breach his threshold. Someone on a trace rifle should hold fire on Rhulk's body until they stop getting immunes, calling to burst him down once he becomes damageable. If everything goes right, Rhulk's final stand should be burned through almost instantly. And that's it for Val the Disciple. I hope you enjoyed watching this chapter of Speedrunning Insights, and that it helped you understand the strategies that exist in Val the Disciple speedruns as they have evolved from the observations made in each encounter. Maybe this video will even inspire some of you to run the raid in the future. Next up on the list is probably King's Fall or Vault of Glass, but I'll be visiting some general speedrunning videos before we get into any of that. Thanks for sticking around.